It is 6:38 on March 20th, 2023. I'm resuming V.I. Lenin, The State and Revolution. Page 53, Section 3. Abolition of Parliamentarism. Quote, the Commune, Marx wrote, was to be a working, not a parliamentary body, executive and legislative at the same time. Instead of deciding once in 3 or 6 years which member of the ruling class was to represent and repress, wer und zertreten, the people in Parliament, universal suffrage was to serve the people, constituted in communes, as individual suffrage serves every other employer in the search for the workers, foremen, and bookkeepers for his business. End quote. Owing to the prevalence of social chauvinism and opportunism, this remarkable criticism of parliamentarism, made in 1871, also belongs now to the forgotten words of Marxism. The professional cabinet ministers and parliamentarians, the traitors to the proletariat and the practical socialists of our day, have left all criticism of parliamentarism to the anarchist, and on this wonderfully reasonable ground, they denounce all criticism of parliamentarism as anarchism. It is not surprising that the proletariats of the advanced parliamentary countries, disgusted with such socialists as the Scheidemans, Davids, Legiens, Sambats, Renadels, Hendersons, Van der Veldes, Stounings, Brantings, Bissolatus and Company, has been with increasing frequency giving its sympathies to anarcho-syndicalism, in spite of the fact that the latter is but the twin brother of opportunism. For Marx, however, revolutionary dialectics was never the empty fashionable phrase, the toy rattle, which Plekhanov, Kautsky, and the others have made of it. Marx knew how to break with anarchism ruthlessly for its inability to make use even of the pigsty of bourgeois parliamentarism, especially when the situation is obviously not revolutionary. But at the same time, he knew how to subject parliamentarism to genuine revolutionary proletarian criticism. To decide once every few years which member of the ruling class is to repress and crush the people through parliament, such is the real essence of bourgeois parliamentarism, not only in parliamentary constitutional monarchies, but also in the most democratic republics. But if we deal with the question of the state, and if we consider parliamentarism as one of the institutions of the state, from the point of view of the task of the proletariat in this field, what is the way out of parliamentarism? How can it be dispensed with? Again and again we have to repeat. The lessons of Marx, based on the study of the Commune, have been so completely forgotten that the present-day social democrat, read present-day traitor to socialism, really cannot understand any criticism of parliamentarism other than anarchist or reactionary criticism. The way out of parliamentarism is not, of course, the abolition of representative institutions and the electoral principle, but the conversion of the representative institutions from talking shops into working bodies. Quote, the Commune was to be a working, not a parliamentary body, executive and legislative at the same time. End quote. A working, not a parliamentary body. This hits straight from the shoulder at the present-day parliamentarians and parliamentary lapdogs of social democracy. Take any parliamentary country, from America to Switzerland, from France to England, Norway, and so forth. In these countries, the real business of state is performed behind the scenes and is carried on by the departments, chancelleries, and general staffs. Parliament itself is given up to talk for the special purpose of fooling the common people. This is so true that even in the Russian Republic, a bourgeois democratic republic, all these sins of parliamentarism were immediately revealed even before it managed to set up a real parliament. The heroes of rotten Philistinism, such as the Skobalevs and Tseretellis, the Chernovs and Aksventievs, have even succeeded in polluting the Soviets after the fashion of most disgusting bourgeois parliamentarism and to convert them into mere talking shops. In the Soviets, messieurs, the socialist ministers, are duping the credulous rustics with phrase-mongering and resolutions. And the government itself, a sort of permanent quadrille, is going on in order that, on the one hand, as many socialist revolutionaries and Mensheviks as possible may in turn get near the pie, the lucrative and honorable post, and that, on the other hand, the attention of the people may be engaged. Meanwhile, it is the chancelleries and the staffs that they do the business of the state. Dielo Naroda, the organ of the ruling Socialist Revolutionary Party, recently admitted in an editorial article, with the matchless candor of people of good society, in which all are engaged in political prostitution, that even in the ministries headed by the socialists, save the mark, the whole bureaucratic apparatus has in fact remained as of old, is working in the old way, and quite freely sabotaging revolutionary measures. Even without this admission, does not the actual history of the participation of the socialist revolutionaries and the Mensheviks in the government prove this? Noteworthy about it is only the fact that in the ministerial company of the cadets, Messieurs Chenovs, Rusinovs, Zenzinovs, and the other editors of Dielo Naroda have so completely lost all sense of shame as to unblushingly proclaim, as it were a mere bagatelle, that in their ministries everything has remained as of old. Revolutionary democratic phrases to gull the rural simple Simons, bureaucracy and red tape to gladden the hearts of the capitalist. That is the essence of the honest coalition. The commune substitutes for the venal and rotten parliamentarism of bourgeois society institutions in which freedom of opinion and of discussion does not degenerate into deception. For the parliamentarians themselves have to work, have to execute their own laws, have themselves to test their results in real life, and to render accounts directly to their constituents. Representative institutions remain, but there is no parliamentarism here as a special system, as the division of labor between the legislative and the executive, as a privileged position for the deputies. We cannot imagine democracy, even proletarian democracy, without representative institutions, but we can and must imagine democracy without parliamentarism. If criticism of bourgeois society is not mere empty words for us, if the desire to overthrow the rule of the bourgeoisie is our earnest and sincere desire, and not a mere election cry for catching workers' votes, as it is with the Mensheviks and the socialist revolutionaries, the Scheidemans and the Legiens, the Sembats and the Van der Veldes. It is extremely instructive to note that, in speaking of the functions of those officials who are necessary for the commune and for proletarian democracy, Marx compares them to the workers of every other employer, that is, of the ordinary capitalist enterprise, with its workers, foremen, and bookkeepers. There is no trace of utopianism in Marx, in the sense that he made up or invented a new society. No, he studied the birth of the new society out of the old, the forms of transition from the latter to the former as a natural historical process. He examined the actual experience of a mass proletarian movement and tried to draw practical lessons from it. He learned from the commune, just as all the great revolutionary thinkers were not afraid to learn from the experience of the great movements of the oppressed classes, and never addressed them with pedantic homilies, such as Plekhanov, they should not have taken to arms, or Tseretelli's, a class must limit itself. There can be no thought of abolishing the bureaucracy at once, everywhere and completely. That is utopia. But to smash the old bureaucratic machine at once and to begin immediately to construct a new one that will permit to abolish gradually all bureaucracy, this is not utopia. This is the experience of the commune. This is the direct and immediate task of the revolutionary proletariat. Capitalism simplifies the functions of state administration. It makes it possible to cast bossing aside and to confine the whole matter to the organization of the proletarians as the ruling class, which will hire workers, foremen, and bookkeepers in the name of the whole of society. We are not utopians. We do not indulge in dreams of dispensing at once with all administration, with all subordination. These anarchist dreams, based upon a lack of understanding of the task of the proletarian dictatorship, are totally alien to Marxism, and as a matter of fact serve only to postpone the socialist revolution until people are different. No, we want the socialist revolution with people as they are now, with people who cannot dispense with subordination, control, and foremen and bookkeepers. But the subordination must be to the armed vanguard of all the exploited and toiling people, i.e., to the proletariat. A beginning can and must be made at once, overnight, of replacing the specific bossing of state officials by the simple functions of foremen and bookkeepers, functions which are already fully within the capacity of the average city dweller and can well be performed for workmen's wages. We ourselves, the workers, will organize large-scale production on the basis of what capitalism has already created, relying on our own experience as workers, establishing strict, iron discipline supported by the state power of the armed workers. We will reduce the role of the state officials to that of simply carrying out our instructions as responsible, revocable, modestly paid foremen and bookkeepers, of course, with the aid of technicians of all sorts, types, and degrees. This is our proletarian task. This is what we can and must start with in accomplishing the proletarian revolution. Such a beginning on the basis of large-scale production will of itself lead to the gradual withering away of all bureaucracy, to the gradual creation of an order without quotation marks, an order bearing no similarity to wage slavery, an order in which the functions of control and accounting, becoming more and more simple, will be performed by each in turn, will then become a habit, and will finally die out as the special functions of a special section of the population. A witty German social democrat of the 70s of the last century called the Postal Service an example of the socialist economic system. This is very true. At present, the Postal Service is a business organized on the lines of a state capitalist monopoly. Imperialism is gradually transforming all trust into organizations of a similar type, in which, standing over the common toilers who are overworked and starved, is the same bourgeois bureaucracy. But the mechanism of social management is here already to hand. We have but to overthrow the capitalist, to crush the resistance of the exploiters with the iron hand of the armed workers, to smash the bureaucratic machine of the modern state. And we shall have a splendidly equipped mechanism freed from the parasite, a mechanism which can very well be set going by the united workers themselves, who will hire technicians, foremen, and bookkeepers and pay them all, as indeed all state officials in general, a workman's wage. Here is a concrete practical task, immediately possible of fulfillment in relation to all trust, a task that will rid the toilers of exploitation and take account of what the commune had already begun to practice, particularly in building up the state. To organize the whole national economy on the lines of the Postal Service so that the technicians, foremen, bookkeepers, as well as all officials, shall receive salaries no higher than a workman's wage, all under the control and leadership of the armed proletariat. This is our immediate aim. It is such a state standing on such an economic foundation that we need. This is what will bring about the abolition of parliamentarism and the preservation of representative institutions. This is what will rid the laboring classes of the prostitution of these institutions by the bourgeoisie. Conclude this section at the top of page 60.